This lesson is about converting units of length. Keep paper and pencil handy. You may also want to use a calculator to solve some of the problems in this lesson. And remember, the problems you see on the screen are also in your study guide. In this lesson, we'll convert units of length in the U.S. customary system. We'll also convert units of length in the metric system. Finally, we'll convert between the two systems, from U.S. units to metric units, and from metric to U.S. units. We'll begin by working with units in the U.S. customary system. We'll use the inch, foot, yard, and mile. Their abbreviations are IN period, FT, YD, and MI. You may already know some of the equivalences for these units. In this lesson, we'll use 4 equivalences. 1 foot equals 12 inches, 1 yard equals 3 feet, 1 yard equals 36 inches, and 1 mile equals 5,280 feet. If you already know these equivalences, you're off to a good start. If you don't, study them. We'll use them in the rest of this lesson. Now let's see how we can use these equivalences to solve some problems. Suppose you want to put up a chain-link fence on one side of your yard. You'll need 23 yards of fencing, but when you go to the building supply store, you discover that fencing isn't sold by the yard. It's sold by the linear foot. You'll have to convert 23 yards to an equivalent number of feet. There are a couple of ways to use unit equivalences to solve this problem. We'll use the unit cancellation method, which we learned in an earlier lesson. We'll start by writing 23 yards as a fraction. We want to multiply 23 yards by a unit conversion factor. We'll write the unit conversion factor from the equivalence that involves yards and feet. 1 yard equals 3 feet. There are 2 unit conversion factors that we can write from this equivalence: 3 feet over 1 yard and 1 yard over 3 feet. In either case, the fraction is equal to 1. We'll use the fraction that allows us to cancel the unit we know, yards, and keep the unit we want in the answer, feet. So we'll use this factor. At this point, we can cancel yards. Next, multiply. In the numerator, 23 times 3 feet is 69 feet. The denominator is 1. You'll need 69 feet of chain-link fence for your yard. Here's another conversion problem. How many yards are there in 252 inches? First, we'll write the problem in equation form. Then write 252 inches as a fraction. Next, multiply by a unit conversion factor. To write the factor, we'll use the equivalence 1 yard equals 36 inches. We want to cancel the unit we know, inches, so 36 inches must be in the denominator of the unit conversion factor. The unit we want in the answer goes in the numerator, 1 yard. Now we can cancel. Next, multiply. In the numerator, 252 times 1 yard equals 252 yards. The denominator is 36. Now we have a division problem. 252 yards divided by 36. You can use a calculator if you like. The quotient is 7 yards. 252 inches equals 7 yards. Here's a problem converting feet to miles. The city of Flagstaff, Arizona is 6,900 feet above sea level. How many miles is that? To find out, we'll write the problem in equation form. To solve the problem, we'll write 6,900 feet as a fraction. We'll multiply it by a unit conversion factor. We'll use the equivalents for miles and feet. The factor 1 mile over 5,280 feet allows us to cancel feet and keep miles in the answer. After we cancel, we can multiply. The numerator is 6,900 miles. The denominator is 5,280. This is a division problem. You can use a calculator to divide 6,900 by 5,280. Here's the answer. Rounded to the nearest tenth, it's about 1.3 miles. The city of Flagstaff is about 1.3 miles above sea level. Let's try a problem that's a little more complicated. How many inches are there in 6.5 miles? First, write the problem in equation form. We don't have an equivalence for miles and inches, but we do have an equivalence for miles and feet, and for feet and inches. So to convert from miles to inches, we'll go through feet. Start by writing 6.5 miles as a fraction. Next, think about writing unit conversion factors. We want inches in the answer, so the numerator of one unit conversion factor must be 12 inches. The denominator is 1 foot. Now we'll write a conversion factor that allows us to cancel miles and feet. 5,280 feet over 1 mile. At this point, we can cancel miles and feet. Next, we'll multiply. In the numerator, we have 6.5 times 5,280 times 12 inches. We'll use a calculator for this multiplication. The numerator is 411,840 inches. The denominator is 1. There are 411,840 inches in 6.5 miles. Here's another problem involving miles and inches. A company manufactures 9,000 lamps in 1 month. It uses 11 inches of beaded chain on the pull switch of each lamp. How many miles of chain are used? In this problem, we want to convert from inches to miles. But how many inches are we talking about? Let's see. There are 11 inches of chain on each of the 9,000 lamps. 9,000 times 11 inches is 99,000 inches. We want to convert 99,000 inches to an equivalent number of miles. We'll start the conversion by writing 99,000 inches as a fraction. To convert from inches to miles, we'll need 2 unit equivalences, one for feet and inches, another for miles and feet. We want miles in the answer, so 1 mile must be in the numerator of 1 unit conversion factor. 5,280 feet is in the denominator. The other unit conversion factor must give us a way to cancel inches and feet. It's 1 foot over 12 inches. Now we can cancel inches and feet. Next, multiply. In the numerator, we have 99,000 miles. In the denominator, multiply 12 times 5,280. We'll use a calculator. The denominator is 63,360. This is a division problem. We'll divide the numerator by the denominator. Rounded to the nearest tenth, the answer is 1.6 miles. The company uses about 1.6 miles of chain on 9,000 lamps. Let's take a look at converting units of length in the metric system. The meter is the basic unit of length. The units larger than the meter are the decameter, hectometer, and kilometer. The units smaller than the meter are the decimeter, centimeter, and millimeter. Of these, only the kilometer, meter, centimeter, and millimeter are commonly used. Their abbreviations are km, m, cm, and mm. Let's take a closer look at these units. You'll see that the lengths represented by the metric units are quite different from the inch, foot, or mile. The millimeter, for example, is the smallest commonly used metric unit. It's much smaller than an inch. A millimeter is about the thickness of a dime. We use the millimeter to measure very small lengths. For example, we'd measure the thickness of glass on a car window in millimeters. It's about 3 millimeters thick. The centimeter is another metric unit that is smaller than the inch. It's a little less than half an inch. A centimeter is about the same length as the edge of a sugar cube. We often use the centimeter to measure things that are measured in inches. We'd use centimeter to measure a business card. It's 9 centimeters by 5 centimeters. The meter is one metric unit that has a close comparison in the U.S. customary system. It's a little longer than 1 yard. A yard is 36 inches. A meter is about 39 inches. We use the meter for things we'd otherwise measure in feet or yards. The height of a bookcase, for example, would be measured in meters. The kilometer is the largest metric unit we'll use. A kilometer is a little more than half a mile. It's about the length of 7 city blocks. The kilometer is used for large measurements of length. If we wanted to find the distance between two cities, we'd use kilometers. In an earlier lesson, we used two methods to convert from one metric unit to another. We converted by using unit cancellation and by moving decimals. To convert with unit cancellation, we had to work with metric unit equivalences. In this lesson, we'll only use the equivalences that contain the common metric units for length. 1 kilometer equals 1,000 meters. 1 meter equals 100 centimeters. And 1 meter equals 1,000 millimeters. We can use these equivalences to solve metric conversion problems. Let's review how to solve metric conversion problems with the unit cancellation method. To convert 8 kilometers to meters, we use a unit equivalence to write a unit conversion factor. Then we cancel and multiply. 8 kilometers equals 8,000 meters. We got the same answer when we move decimals, but instead of multiplying by a unit conversion factor, we have to use the smaller right rule. To convert to a smaller unit, we move the decimal to the right. When we convert 8 kilometers to meters, we are changing to a smaller unit. A meter is 3 units smaller than a kilometer. So we move the decimal in 8 3 places to the right. We use a different rule in problems where we must convert to a larger unit. We move the decimal to the left. We call this the larger left rule. A kilometer is 3 units larger than a meter. So we move the decimal in 55,000 3 places to the left. 55,000 meters equals 55 kilometers. Now let's take a look at converting units between the two systems. We'll use both the unit cancellation and decimal methods to convert U.S. customary units to metric units and to convert metric to U.S. customary units. Converting between the two systems means that we'll be working with two sets of unit equivalences. We'll use the U.S. customary system equivalences for inches, feet, yards, and miles. We'll use the metric system equivalences for the common metric units, kilometer, meter, centimeter, and millimeter. To convert between the two systems, we'll use a new equivalence. It has 1 unit from the U.S. system and 1 unit from the metric system. The equivalence is 1 inch equals 2.54 centimeters. From this equivalence, we can write 2 unit conversion factors. 1 inch over 2.54 centimeters and 2.54 centimeters over 1 inch. We call these fractions transition factors. It's important to learn them. We'll use one of these transition factors any time we want to make the transition from one system of measurement to the other. To make the transition from the U.S. to the metric system, we start with the unit we know, multiply by a transition factor, and get an answer that is in a metric unit. To convert from metric to U.S. units, we start with the metric unit, multiply by a transition factor, and get an answer that is in a U.S. customary unit. These are the only 2 transition factors you'll have to know in this lesson. You'll see them when we convert between metric and U.S. units. For example, we'll use them when we convert from inches to millimeters, from meters to feet, and from kilometers to miles. Let's try converting inches to centimeters. How many centimeters are there in 23 inches? We'll start as we would with any unit cancellation. Write 23 inches as a fraction. Next, use this equivalence to write a transition factor. We want to cancel inches and have centimeters in the answer. The factor is 2.54 centimeters over 1 inch. Notice that the unit we want in our answer is the numerator of the transition factor. We can cancel inches. Next, multiply. In the numerator, we have 23 times 2.54 centimeters. Use a calculator if you like. The product is 58.42 centimeters. The denominator is 1. 23 inches equals 58.42 centimeters. Here's another example. This time we'll convert 135 centimeters to an equivalent number of inches. We'll start by writing 135 centimeters as a fraction. Next, let's think about the transition factor. We'll write it from this equivalence. The unit inch must be the unit in the answer, so the numerator of the transition factor must be 1 inch. We want to cancel centimeters, so 2.54 centimeters must be in the denominator. Let's cancel centimeters. Now multiply. In the numerator we have 135 inches. In the denominator we have 2.54. This is a division problem. We'll use a calculator to divide the numerator by the denominator. Rounded to the nearest hundredth, the answer is 53.15 inches. 135 centimeters is a little more than 53 inches. Let's take another look at these last two problems. In the first problem, we converted from the U.S. customary system to the metric system. We used this transition factor. We always use this factor when converting from the U.S. system to the metric system. When we want a metric unit in the answer, we must have a metric unit in the numerator. In the other problem, we converted from the metric system to the U.S. system. We used this transition factor. We always use this factor when we convert to the U.S. customary system. When we want a U.S. unit in the answer, we must have a U.S. unit in the numerator. In these two problems, the transition factor was the only factor we needed. Now let's look at a problem where we need the transition factor and another factor. A textile company in Mexico exports fabric to the United States in 35-meter bolts. How many inches of fabric are in each bolt? To solve the problem, we'll convert 35 meters to an equivalent number of inches. Start by writing 35 meters as a fraction. Since we want a U.S. unit in the answer, we'll use the transition factor that has a U.S. unit, inch, in the numerator. 1 inch over 2.54 centimeters. Next, we need a unit conversion factor that will cancel the metric units, meter and centimeter. The unit equivalence for meters and centimeters is 1 meter equals 100 centimeters. The unit conversion factor we'll use is 100 centimeters over 1 meter. At this point, we can cancel meters and centimeters. Next, we'll multiply. In the numerator, we have 3,500 inches. In the denominator, we have 2.54. This is a division problem. We'll use a calculator to divide the numerator by the denominator. We'll round the answer to the nearest whole number. There are about 1,378 inches of fabric on each bolt. By the way, there's another approach to solving this problem. Instead of writing this unit conversion factor, we could have saved some time by using the decimal method for this part of the problem. When we multiplied 35 meters by 100 centimeters over 1 meter, we were actually converting meters to centimeters. We have to get the centimeters because centimeter is the metric unit in the transition factor. But we don't have to use this method to change meters to centimeters. We can move decimals instead. Here's how. we'll convert 35 meters to centimeters by using the smaller right rule. Mark the decimal in 35. A centimeter is 2 units smaller than a meter, so we'll move the decimal 2 places to the right. 35 meters equals 3,500 centimeters. Now we can convert 3,500 centimeters to inches by using unit cancellation. Multiply 3,500 centimeters by the transition factor. Cancel centimeters and multiply. Dividing the numerator by the denominator and rounding to the nearest whole number gives us the same answer, 1,378 inches. Using the decimal method to convert metric units is a shortcut we'll use in the rest of this lesson. When we convert from metric to U.S. units, we can use the shortcut before multiplying by the transition factor. When we convert from U.S. to metric units, we use the shortcut after multiplying. Here's an example. An engineer who designs parts for cars has to convert a 3.5-inch hose to millimeters. How many millimeters are there in 3.5 inches? First, write the problem in equation form. 3.5 inches equals an equivalent number of millimeters. Next, write 3.5 inches as a fraction and decide on the transition factor. We're converting to the metric system, so the metric unit centimeter must be in the numerator. 2.54 centimeters over 1 inch. We want the answer in millimeters. Here's what would happen if we used the unit cancellation method to get the answer in millimeters. We'd need 2 more unit conversion factors. 1 meter over 100 centimeters, and 1,000 millimeters over 1 meter. Canceling and multiplying would give us the answer in millimeters, but this is a lot of work. If we use the decimal shortcut, we won't need these metric conversion factors. We can convert centimeters to millimeters by moving decimals. We can cancel and multiply at this point. We'll cancel inches, then multiply. In the numerator, we have 3.5 times 2.54 centimeters. That equals 8.89 centimeters. The denominator is 1. Now we'll move decimals to convert 8.89 centimeters to an equivalent number of millimeters. We'll use the smaller right rule. A millimeter is 1 unit smaller than a centimeter, so we'll move the decimal 1 unit to the right. It's 88.9 millimeters. The 3.5-inch hose measures 88.9 millimeters. By the way, even though we've been using these 2 transition factors to solve problems, some textbooks use other factors. They're based on different unit equivalences for converting from metric to U.S. and converting from U.S. to metric. You could memorize all of these equivalences to convert between the 2 systems of measurement, but in this lesson we keep it simple. We use one equivalence. 1 inch equals 2.54 centimeters. Here's another problem. How many feet of telephone cord are on a 100-meter roll? Write the problem in equation form. We'll use the decimal method to convert 100 meters to centimeters. We convert to centimeters because the centimeter is the metric unit in the transition factor. To convert, we'll move the decimal in 100 2 places to the right. 100 meters equals 10,000 centimeters. Now convert 10,000 centimeters to feet. Start by writing 10,000 centimeters as a fraction. Next, decide on the transition factor. We are converting to the U.S. system, so we must have a U.S. unit in the numerator. The factor is 1 inch over 2.54 centimeters. We still need another conversion factor here. We want feet in our answer, so feet must be in the numerator of our next conversion factor. We want to cancel inches. The factor is 1 foot over 12 inches. After canceling centimeters and inches, we multiply the fractions. In the numerator, we have 10,000 feet. In the denominator, multiply 2.54 times 12. It's 30.48. Now we'll divide 10,000 by 30.48. We'll round the answer to the nearest foot. It's 328 feet. A 100-meter roll of telephone cord is about 328 feet long. Here's a problem converting kilometers to miles. Carol is training for a 5-kilometer run. How long is the race in miles? We want to convert 5 kilometers to an equivalent number of miles. We'll start by using the decimal shortcut. We'll convert 5 kilometers to centimeters. We're converting to a smaller unit, so we'll use the smaller right rule. A centimeter is 5 units smaller than a kilometer, so the decimal in 5 kilometers moves 5 places to the right. 5 kilometers equals 500,000 centimeters. Now we can convert 500,000 centimeters to an equivalent number of miles. We'll start by writing the distance we know as a fraction. Next, think about which transition factor to use. Since we're converting to the U.S. system, we'll use 1 inch over 2.54 centimeters. We want miles in the answer, so 1 mile must be in the numerator of 1 unit conversion factor. The unit that connects inches and miles is feet, so 5,280 feet is in the denominator of the factor. Now we need a factor to cancel inches and feet. We'll use 1 foot over 12 inches. We can cancel centimeters, inches, and feet. Next, multiply. In the numerator, we have 500,000 miles. In the denominator, we have 2.54 times 12 times 5,280. The denominator is 160,934.4. This is a division problem. We'll divide the numerator by the denominator. We'll round the answer to the nearest mile. The 5-kilometer run is about 3 miles long. Here's one more problem. An electrician brings a spool of 400 yards of wire to a construction site. He uses 20 meters of wire for each of 16 apartments. How many meters of wire does he have left when the job is finished? This problem has a few more steps than the previous problems. To find the remaining amount, we'll have to subtract the amount used from the original amount. The original amount is given in yards. The amount used is given in meters. We'll want our answer in meters. Before we can subtract the amount used, we'll have to convert units. We can convert the original amount to meters first, then find the amount used. Or we can find the amount used first, then convert the original amount to meters. We'll do the latter. We'll first find the amount of wire cut. The electrician uses 20 meters for each of 16 apartments. Multiplying these two amounts gives us the total amount used. 20 meters times 16 is 320 meters. We know the amount used is 320 meters, but we can't subtract this from the original amount until both amounts are in the same unit. We want the answer in meters, so we'll convert 400 yards to an equivalent number of meters. We'll start by writing 400 yards as a fraction. Next, write a transition factor. We're converting to a metric unit, so the transition factor will have to be 2.54 centimeters over 1 inch. Now write a unit conversion factor that allows us to cancel the U.S. customary units, yards and inches. 1 yard equals 36 inches, so we can use the factor 36 inches over 1 yard. Cancel yards and inches. Next, multiply. In the numerator, multiply 400 times 36 times 2.54 centimeters. The product is 36,576 centimeters. The denominator is 1. We want the answer in meters, so we'll convert centimeters to meters by moving the decimal. A meter is 2 units larger than a centimeter, so the decimal moves 2 places to the left. It's 365.76 meters. We'll round to the nearest whole number. 400 yards is about 366 meters. Now we can subtract the amount used from the original amount. 366 minus 320 is 46. There are about 46 meters of wire left on the spool. If you had any difficulty with the ideas of this lesson, work through it again or ask someone to help you. Otherwise, you're ready for the examples and problems in your study guide.